All right. Hello. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Alex Rottenberry, and I'm the Complete and Green Streets Planner at the Mid-America Regional Council. And we wanted to once again welcome you to the Pathways to Vision Zero Summit. We are excited to be hosting this summit in an effort to encourage our communities to reduce traffic crash fatalities and serious injuries down to zero. For this session, we want to encourage you to turn your cameras on so our guests can feel like they are interacting with you, but please keep mics off during the presentation. We invite you to type any questions into the chat throughout the presentation, and I will read them to our presenters either at the Q&A time, or we've allowed a couple of minutes between each presenter to answer a question or two. All right, so we wanted to take a quick moment to recognize our summit planning partners represented here on the screen. So thank you to all of those organizations that helped us make this series possible. Before we get into this session, we wanted to invite local area jurisdictions, so counties and municipalities, jurisdictions, cities, villages, etc., to take lessons learned from the Pathways to Vision Zero Summit and put them into action for your community. Mark will be hosting a free two-part workshop with subject matter experts designed to help you bring a policy and an initial plan to make streets safe for everyone. So please save December 4th and 8th on your calendars. And if you're interested in participating, and we have Amanda has gone ahead and put in the chat the link in order to sign up for that. All right, so we're excited to continue our summit series with our next session titled Creating Change from Any Agency. So our speakers today are John Nelson, Assistant to the State Highway and Traffic Engineer, Missouri Department of Transportation, Mary Cummings, Belton USD 124 School Board, and Officer Jay Fleer, Mission Police Department. John helps champion the department's highway safety efforts, including the development of the state's strategic highway safety plan. Through the Missouri Coalition for Roadway Safety, John frequently collaborates with safety partners throughout the state, as well as the Federal Highway Administration and NHTSA, to implement both infrastructure and behavioral solutions. John has worked for MoDOT since graduating from the University of Missouri-Columbia in 2003, and is most passionate about reducing fatal and serious injury crashes on Missouri roadways. Jay has been in law enforcement for 29 years and has worked for the Mission Police Department since 2007. He served in a vast array of assignments and is currently assigned to the Patrol Division. In addition to patrol duties, Officer Fleer serves as Field Training Officer, Firearms Range Master, and Community Outreach and Education Officer. Officer Fleer coordinates the Child Passenger Safety Program for the Mission Police Department and is an instructor for the Child Passenger Safety Technician certification courses. Mary is a retired teacher from the Belton 123 School District. She now serves on the Belton School Board. During her tenure as a teacher at Belton High School, she educated leadership students about driver safety. Many of the students went on to educate their peers and community. Through the efforts of these students, the city of Belton adopted a primary seatbelt ordinance. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and John, it's all you.
All right, thank you very much, Alex. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and be part of this series that you all have going on. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and while that's loading, just kind of introduce. I really like the title of this session about creating change in any agency, and that's really what I want to talk to the group about today is how we're trying to do that at a statewide level in the state of Missouri with our new strategic highway safety plan. So if you were at our highway safety conference here back at the end of September, early October, you saw that we unveiled this new plan, Show Me Zero, Driving Missouri Towards Safer Roads. And that's really what I want to share today, how we envision this document. There's nothing magic about the document itself, but it's really what it's trying to create behind that. So just to give everyone a little bit of history, back in the mid-2000s, Congress actually mandated that every state Department of Transportation develop what they called a strategic highway safety plan that was geared to reduce fatalities and serious injuries on public roadways. And so, like all the other states, Missouri, led by MoDOT, developed the state's first strategic highway safety plan called Missouri's Blueprint for Safer Roadways. That plan was, though MoDOT was the lead agency and the one that had to report to Federal Highway, it was actually a very collaborative process with various stakeholders throughout the state that came together to identify what those things were. And then every 4 years after that, that plan, per the regulations, was updated. So when we got to 2020, we knew that it was going to be time for us to be updating our next plan again. But I do want to be very clear that, you know, these plans for us, it's not simply about federal compliance or meeting the federal regulations that were set forth by Congress in the mid 2000s. Really, there is an overwhelming loss of life on our roadways every year. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir in some regards, but over the last decade in Missouri, 8,505 people lost their lives because of a traffic crash. And so that's really what we're trying to change, what we're trying to get to with the previous iterations of the strategic highway safety plan, as well as the new plan, Show Me Zero. You can see on the chart here, this has been the fatality trend in Missouri since the first plan was created. 2005 is actually kind of the peak year of Missouri. If you look at our recent history, we had over 1,200 fatalities that year. And you can see early on, we saw a lot of success in our state. And from 2005 to 2013, we actually saw a 40% reduction in fatalities. We started to see that level off, and then actually, along with the rest of the country, spiked again in 2016. And then the last few years, we've slowly whittled away at that a little bit. And then 2020 hit, which has just been really a disaster in a lot of ways, even out on our roadways. So far in 2020, we're up about 11% of fatalities compared to this same time last year. And we're on track, unfortunately, for landing somewhere between 950 and 1,000 fatalities this year in 2020, which, as you can see, we would have to go back several years to see a time where that has been the case. So when we got our group together, it was a little over a year ago. We convened with stakeholders from all over the state, again, representing different backgrounds. So we have our enforcement partners, our education partners, state agencies, emergency services, engineering, planning organizations, 65 or so different individuals from about 30 plus organizations throughout the state came together and said, okay, what is it we can do? I'll just go back to this slide real fast. How do we get past, break this plateau or this hump that we can't seem to get past it and get down to, you know, lower levels and really start to approach a reality of zero fatalities, which admittedly seems extremely far-fetched. And, you know, that's going to be hard, but the group did identify some things that really tie into this theme about we've got to change culture, not just in our own organizations, but really throughout the state. And, you know, that goes all the way from the statewide official level down to the families and individuals that reside in Missouri. And so the group identified 4 goals really that they wanted with the new strategic highway safety plan. One wanted to keep it shorter. So we cut the size of the plan down really to make it more, I guess, digestible or more appealing to people that maybe they would pick up and actually look at it. We wanted to narrow the focus. Previous versions of the plan looked at a couple dozen different strategies, not strategies, but emphasis areas. We really narrowed this down. I'm going to talk about the 4 biggies. But we really wanted to also engage every single Missourian. So our previous plans did a really good job of engaging what I'll call our traditional safety stakeholders. So law enforcement, researchers, universities, to some extent planning organizations, and then public works agencies. But they didn't always do a great job at connecting us with just individual families or users of the system and try to help them broaden their understanding of the crash picture in Missouri. So we kind of took a page out of the playbook of the Citizens Guide for Transportation Funding, where we wanted the document really to accomplish 2 things. We wanted to give all Missourians a better understanding of the crash picture in our state, and then we wanted them to know how they can personally contribute to that. So the document, as far as narrowing the focus, we really landed on 4 things. And these are the 4 things that are pretty much part of any crash that we see in Missouri that results in a fatality or a serious injury. And that's occupant protection, which would be your seat belts, your car seats, your helmets, distracted driving, speed and aggressive driving, or impaired driving. Those 4 things account for the vast majority of our fatal crashes in our state. And it also gives us an opportunity really to keep the message simple. So if we could, in our communications with Missourians or with organizations, companies, schools, whatever it might be, if we could convince people these 4 things: buckle up, put your phone down, slow down, and drive sober, then we knew that that's really where the source of a lot of the crashes in our state, and that those would really be the things that could drive behavior change in our state, keeping it simple and actionable. Real briefly, I'll just hit on those 4 areas just to let you know why they're in there. I think most of you know, but seatbelts continue to be the single greatest way anyone can improve their odds of surviving a crash. In Missouri, shows 88%. Actually, our survey from 2020 dropped back. It's a little over 86% this year. But the key thing I want to point out is that 12% or 14% that's not buckling up, they're severely overrepresented in the fatal crashes that are occurring. So they account for almost 2/3 of the vehicle occupant fatalities in our state. In fact, if we looked at survival rates in our crashes, if 100% of Missourians, drivers, and passengers use their seatbelts, then we would see instantly about 240 lives saved each year. Distracted driving, we all see this every day when we were going to work or school. You see this all the time, people using their phones. It's one of the fastest growing contributors of crashes in our state. And while we think of this maybe as a right or a privilege, the reality is more than half of the time, someone other than the distracted driver is being killed in these crashes. And it's also not just a teenager problem. 70% of our cell phone related crashes in Missouri involved a driver who was age 22 or older. So that's another big one we identified. Speed, honestly, is probably the most critical and prevalent behavior taking place on our roadways that honestly it goes largely ignored, mainly because everybody does it and there's this public acceptance that everybody can speed and it's okay. But year after year, it is the top contributing circumstance in Missouri fatal crashes. We talk about drinking and driving a lot, which we should, but speed, has been cited nearly twice as often as impairment in the fatal crashes in our state. And then, of course, the 4th one is impaired driving. This makes up about 20% of the fatalities in our state. We've seen some progress on the alcohol-related issues, and I think culturally, when we're talking about change, we do see a good model there where it really is a frowned-upon behavior. What we're challenged with now is drug-impaired driving, which has been increasing really steadily. We did see a decrease last year in 2019, but you go back 10 years, alcohol-related fatalities are down 34%. Drug-impaired fatalities are actually up 49%. So those 4 things, buckle up, phone down, slow down, and drive sober are really the key messages that we're trying to leave people with in the new Show Me Zero plan. We do also identify some special road user groups that are more vulnerable or overrepresented in the data, and that would be your teen drivers, your older drivers, age 65 and above, and then, of course, pedestrians and bicyclists. Pedestrians and bicyclists, really alarming in our state right now. They've seen increases the last couple of years. We're looking at an increase this year. You go back 10 years, again, pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities are up in Missouri 95% compared to 10 years ago, where all other fatal crashes in Missouri are basically at a 0% increase. So when we think about changing culture, I guess with the Show Me Zero plan, really the idea is that everyone can do something. And so again, we're not just targeting law enforcement agencies or hospitals or MPOs, the DOT, but we really want everyone to see there is something they can personally do to contribute to the progress and to help get us closer to zero. And so we've laid out Show Me Zero differently than the past plans, where we've specifically grouped the strategies by user type. So if you go in there, those last 6 pages or so of the document, you'll see here are strategies specific for schools. Here are strategies specific for law enforcement agencies. Here are strategies for small businesses. Here are strategies for families and individuals. And we tried to cover as many of those areas of contributors that we could, so that we really want anyone who picks up this document or who goes to the website and views it to walk away and say, hey, here's at least 2 or 3 things that I can do personally or that my company can do corporately to help make Missouri a safer state. We know it's an enormous challenge, but I will say that I think we also know that's what it's going to take is until Missourians or those in Kansas or other states decide that really demand that we have safer roadways and everybody contributes in that way. It's going to be a tough road, to go down and to improve. We spend anywhere from about $100 million every year in the state of Missouri on actual roadway improvements, which do some really good things. But that really just chips away at those numbers a little bit at a time. And so combining that with these behavioral changes is really where we're going at. And so again, with the statewide level of the plan, what we're really asking people to do with this and hoping the goal is 2 things. We want everyone first and foremost to understand this is an issue. I don't want to throw around the word pandemic lightly given the current climate, but there is a public health crisis occurring on our roadways every single year that we largely ignore as a society until it hits us personally. So we want Missourians to understand the issue. We want them to know the scope of it, the extent of it, so that they realize just how many people are losing their lives simply because they want to go to work, they want to go to school, they want to go to a ball game, a dance, whatever it is. And we're losing lives just because we're trying to get from one place to the other. And then what we're asking people to do in that document is, okay, now that you understand the issue, how is it that you can contribute? What is it that you can do personally? So what I like to encourage people is first look within, whether that's them as an individual or their organization. We did that at MoDOT whenever we launched the Buckle Up, Phone Down campaign. We realized, hey, we've got this campaign, we're telling people to do these 2 things, but in our organization, we actually did not have a policy related to using a cell phone while driving. So we put that in place. Not only does it give us more credibility, but it also it builds our own understanding of that, knowing the things that work. So we look within, see what are those things that we can change ourselves, that we can do immediately influence. And then we look outward or look around, into our community, into those areas that we have a connection or an influence. And I'm excited to hear Jay and Mary talk about this because that's exactly what they're doing. They're looking at in their community, the ways they can influence this and help us go forward. I think if you haven't read the plan, I would love to encourage everyone to do it. You can go to savemolives.com and you can download the PDF. Again, it's 44 pages long. So it's pretty short. We got a lot of pictures and graphics in there, hopefully that'll keep you entertained. But you can also just click through the website and see the different areas. Why do we talk about seatbelts, distraction, speed, and impairment so much? And it's because we want Missourians to know this is why these crashes are happening, and it really is in our control to make responsible choices and change those behaviors, and we can really prevent a lot of these crashes. So appreciate the time again being here, and encourage you out again, go out to savemolives.com and check out the Show Me Zero plan for yourself. Thank you very much, Alex.
All right, thank you very much. I'll transition over to the rest of the PowerPoint. There was a quick question, and now I can't pull it up. It was a question about snow removal. So here in Kansas City, nope, it's not pulling up. There we go.
Here, I gotcha. So it asked that essentially a safety issue they're seeing in the Kansas City area is the lack of prompt snow removal on bike and ped bridges across the Missouri River. So is there anything that MoDOT can do to make sure these paths on the various bridges can be cleaned and clear in order to make other transportation methods safe?
Well, I could definitely pass the message along to our maintenance division who oversees that. But I do think this is a good example of how it's easy for us, even as a transportation organization, to sometimes overlook, you know, road users that aren't driving a car or a truck. And so, you know, our first priority is we got to get those lanes clean, get those roadways clean so the cars can drive through. And it's the same way with some of our safety countermeasures. You know, we tend to navigate or gravitate towards those vehicle crashes. And so I'll definitely pass that message on, Sean, but I think it also highlights an issue that we tend to overlook the non-motorized user sometimes when we're talking about these plans and priorities.
All right, Officer Fleer, are you ready to go?
I am ready.
All right.
All right. So good morning. Thank you all for coming. Thanks, Mark, for inviting me to be here. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit today is the impact that police staffing has had on traffic. Not so much fatalities, because fortunately in City of Mission, we haven't had very many traffic fatalities in recent years. So we'll go to the next slide. And the reason why I have this slide in this map isn't because I want you to be able to pick out where Uncle Horace lives in the City of Mission, but rather so that you can see that although we are small, the City of Mission has a lot of cars and vehicles that flow through it every single day. If you look at our new logo, it's kind of this crossroads type pattern, because we are kind of a crossroads of Kansas City. Less than 3 square miles, but we've got I-35, obviously I-35, US 69 highway, which is Metcalf and turns into I-635, and then US 56 highway, which is Shawnee Mission Parkway. So really going from Johnson County into Kansas City, or Kansas City into Johnson County, there's a good chance that people are going to come through the City of Mission. So again, we're I think we're around 10,000 residents now. And then at complete staffing, our police department has 32 officers, and that's everything from the chief down to the newest officer that we've got working patrol. And we'll go to the next slide, which I just discovered. This slide and the next slide are identical. Not intentionally identical, but they are. But when I turned my camera off, I ran out and I printed off the numbers that I need to do. So, but what I want to compare is that in this 5 years difference, in 2014, our police department was fully staffed with the budgeted 30 officers. Again, that's from the chief all the way down to the newest cop working the street. At that time, we had 4 officers. There was a sergeant and 3 officers who were assigned to our traffic division, which meant that we had 24 hours. We had a traffic enforcement officer. Days and afternoons, we had our motorcycle guys riding, and then our midnight shift guy, his focus is on DUIs. So just know if you all get pulled over by a cop on a motorcycle, you're probably going to get a ticket. That's their job. That's their mission. And then in 2019, we weren't fully staffed, our average was we were at about 24 officers. Now that's because police departments, law enforcement agencies are notorious headhunters. They'll see a quality cop in one agency and they'll try to draw them over, and they give them lateral pay raises, and that's how officers can make more money, is by switching agencies. Or cops get out, they retire, they leave the business altogether. So on average in 2019, we had 14 cops assigned to patrol and 2 assigned to the traffic unit, and that was our motorcycle guy on day shift and our midnight shift DUI enforcement person. So the way that translates is that obviously, it affected me because in 2019, I only took 8 hours of vacation time because we're on minimum staffing for so long. Now, don't feel too sorry for me because I had about 3 weeks worth of holiday pay that I did take. So, but you know, that's we were all working really hard in 2019. So we'll go to the next slide and we'll see how that sort of translates. Oh, you don't have the next slide. So I will tell you, let's leave that one up and I'll tell you. So in 2014, we had a total of 254 car crashes. There was 46 injury accidents and 160 non-injury. Most of those are fender benders at intersections, somebody trying to merge onto Metcalf from one of the east-west streets and doesn't move quite fast enough to get rear-ended. I would say the majority of those was that. And 48 hit and run car crashes. In 2014, our officers wrote 10,155 traffic citations. We had 241 DUI arrests. Part of that is that we had 4 fully staffed saturation patrols. And what's that mean? That means that we had a supervisor and 3 officers who would go out onto our streets and highways and look for impaired drivers, investigate driving under the influence, and make those arrests. So let's fast forward to 2019 when we were short-staffed. So obviously short-staffed, we're not able to be as many places. We're not able to be as visible. We're clearly not able to be as aggressive with our traffic safety, our traffic enforcement. So we had 320 car crashes. Of those, we had 55 injury accidents, 194 non-injury accidents, and 71 hit and run crashes. So our high crash areas, the locations that we have our most of our crashes, are the areas that I wanted to make sure that we highlighted in that map. We don't have to go back to it, but it is the access onto US 69 highway, onto Metcalf from 61st Street, 58th Street, 56th Street. Those were our probably our biggest numbers, but also our biggest number of injury crashes was on Shawnee Mission Parkway and Knoll, which is US 56 highway and Knoll. So those are kind of our big thoroughfares here. And of course, Johnson Drive, we had a significant number of crashes on Johnson Drive as well. So, and then those are arterial streets in the city of Mission. So 320 crashes. We still wrote a fair number of tickets. 99,876 total violations were cited, but our number of DUI apprehensions was severely diminished. We had in 2019 125 DUI arrests, and part of that came from we still had 4 saturation patrols, but they weren't fully staffed. They would have a supervisor and a good one was 1 or 2 officers. So we've gone from having 4 cops going out and looking for impaired drivers to 2 or 3 cops going out looking for impaired drivers. So that makes a huge difference with our DUI enforcement. We'll move on to the next area here. An area that's kind of near and dear to my heart. We did have the questions about the people who use bikes to commute. I use a bike to commute, and since August, I have driven my car to work a total of 6 times, and that was because it was raining, and I'm scared that I will dissolve, or because I had to go somewhere else for training, and it just wasn't feasible for me to drive from here to say Bonner Springs on my bicycle. I'd have to leave at like 3 in the morning. I'm really not very fast on it either. But it's important to me, and part of the reason why that's so important is because I've now had yesterday marks the 2nd time that I And I wear super high visibility stuff. I've got lights all over my bike, but I leave my house at 6:15 in the morning. It's still pretty dark out. But I've had 2 incidents where I've, just narrowly escaped what I believe to be certain death. And so I just want to bring to everybody's attention, and it's one of the things that I do. I'm one of the bicycle patrol officers in Mission when they let me get out and take my bike. Mostly it's for special events, but sharing the roads. The city of Mission, you can go to the next slide, received some grant money as part of our Safe Routes to School initiative. And so I want to talk about the 4 types of bike lanes that are being used in the Kansas City area. There's really only 2 of the 4 that we're using in Mission. But I also tell bike riders that they need to comply with the traffic laws. I've written stop sign tickets to bike riders who have made complaints about cars nearly running over them. Well, they got ran over because they didn't stop at a stop sign. And then, of course, giving enough room for that bike rider to not feel squished into the curb. That's always fun. So the first, you can go to the next slide. The first type of bike routes, and this is the kind that we've recently installed here in Mission, is our striped bike lanes. And we don't have any of the green ones, but the big point that I want to make is the last bullet point on that. And people kind of think that it's okay, because if you're looking, this is Lamar, and if you're looking at Lamar, there's actually street parking allowed on Lamar. So that kind of creates a problem for bicyclists who now have to leave this protected bike lane and go into the lane of traffic in order to go around a parked car. And you go to the next slide. So sharrows, see, and that's not a sharrow. My proofreader didn't do a very good job. That's not a sharrow. The sharrows are, it's a picture of a bike with like the hash marks on top of it. And that's a contraction. It's a sharing and arrow. And that's where people get confused. There's not a dedicated space for bicyclists to be. And that's when, those are the areas with the sharrows is where I found that people get cranky with me, yell things at me, tell me to get a car, get off the street, which pleases me greatly. So the next slide is a buffered bike lane, and we don't have any of those. We have the striped bike lanes and the sharrows here in Mission. Buffered bike lanes, I believe there's some of those in Kansas City. Kansas City, this is important because one of the bike shops I went to said that they sold during the pandemic 300% more bicycles than they had anticipated. If you go and try to find like an entry-level bicycle right now that's for somebody who's between like 5'6" and 5'10", it's hard to find. So buffered bike lanes, I like, we all like buffered bike lanes. They're just, Kansas City's got some. I'm not sure too many other cities have those around here. But it just gives a little bit more space between bikes and cars. It makes everybody more comfortable. And you can go to the next slide. This is not a protected bike lane picture. Thank you, editor. But they have, in addition to having that buffer, they're going to have either stripes or bollards, large planters. I don't know that I've seen, I think, a few streets in Kansas City that have some signs in the buffer area, but I've not seen any that have like big stuff that you can't run over kind of things. And then we'll go to the next slide. So was talking with one of my friends who not sure if she's in this room with us. And evidently we don't really know what to do when we're involved in a car versus a bicycle crash. So my suggestion is always this, is call 911, keep everybody there. If you haven't met the requirements for a accident report, which the state of Kansas is $1,000 property damage, or an injury, or somebody who's impaired, or somebody leaves the scene. Those are the requirements by the state of Kansas. Cops don't mind going to these calls if you haven't met those, because it's an easy call. We get there, we say, okay, there's not any damage, nobody's hurt. There's no report. We're done in 10 minutes. But I always encourage bicyclists, let us call an ambulance for you. Have them take a look at you. Maybe in that adrenaline dump, you don't notice that bone sticking out of your leg, something like that. They're not going to charge you if they come and check you and you get refused. But that way, if at a later time you discover that you are in fact injured, you need to go get medical treatment, at least there's something that's sort of been documented. It's not like a report, but it goes into the call log that the officers responded, so they could go back at a later time and make that crash report to get the insurance to cover for all that. But the cops will get there, they'll make a decision whether or not a report is appropriate. And again, you know, if we can handle by officer calls are cops' favorites, because you get there, you talk to everybody, everyone's okay, and you're done. And we'll go to the next slide. I don't have any links or what have you, but if you got questions, absolutely shoot me an email, and we'll see what we can do. Again, you know, I do the community outreach and education programs for missions. So even if it's not something that I could help you out with, I probably know somebody who does or who can. So that's where we got.
Thank you, Officer Fleer. Really appreciate it. I think if it's okay, we'll move on, and then we'll save questions for the end, just to make sure that Mary has an opportunity to finish her presentation.
Are you ready for me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm not a professional in the law enforcement agency, but I feel like I'm a professional with kids who have a good voice to get out to agencies. We're Belton, we're a suburb of Kansas City. Our population is less than 25,000. And so we face challenges from suburban to rural to urban with our traffic patterns. We have a lot of growth with new industry and businesses, commercial businesses. So that's one of our challenges. And then our high school has about 1,200 students. So we're trying to develop leadership for these kids to get out into our community, not just for safe driving, but for many other things. But today I'm going to talk about the group that worked on safe driving. We can move on. Okay, so how did it all start? We went to the MoDOT conference that was the Blueprint conference. Now, John referred to it. It's now the Highway Safety Conference. And I took 3 students as a result of being Team of the Year for another program that was partially sponsored by MoDOT. They went to the workshops. They couldn't believe that adults weren't wearing seatbelts. So maybe they were a little more sheltered than we thought. So we got to talking about it on the way home. We talked about seatbelt laws. And as we drove through Grandview, which is just north of us, there were signs on the highway that said Grandview is a primary seatbelt city. Well, my girls decided if Grandview could do it, we could do it. So that was their challenge. So we moved forward with that and really started our campaign. Next slide, please. So they did a lot of research. The picture there shows them meeting with our chief of police and our traffic safety officer. They uncovered a lot of information about statistics in Belton and crashes and all of those kinds of things. Then they wanted to go one step further because they needed to take it to the city. They decided to meet with city councilmen individually to get their focus and what they thought, rather than just go to a city council meeting and present information. So once they did meet with different city council members, they had their plan put together. They looked at our city attorney, judges, just to be sure that we looked at the law carefully as well. So then they moved on and they presented at a city council meeting. And at that council meeting, they they showed how Grandview transferred in from a secondary to a primary seatbelt city, so they could see that it could be feasible. And at that meeting, we got a lot of positive information, a lot of positive feedback, and the council wasn't ready to act, so we left it there at that time. We also presented it to our school board because we wanted the school board to see that our students had gone outside of the school and into our community to try to make a difference. Next slide, please. So some of the things we found as we moved along was we met with more people than we had to, but that was okay. One of our roadblocks was going to be that the state fine was $10, and our hands were kind of tied with the amount of fine, and would that be a feasible fine? And they also looked at, we need to stop following Missouri's lead. We need to lead the way to change Missouri. That was the kids' thought on that. And they had a lot of ideas to get around that $10 fine. Some of them were very creative. They thought that since we're a service organization, they thought if people didn't wear their seatbelt, then instead of fines, they should have to perform community service instead of, and that might make more of an impact than paying $10. But of course, that couldn't work. We had an election that spring. We lost some of our momentum. We had several city council members leave, and we had new members come on, so the council wasn't as informed as it had been. So we didn't give up. We kept trying. We kept doing things within our community to get our name out there. Next slide, please. So we have a coalition in Belton that deals with teen safety and all sorts of different things. And it just so happened that one of our new city council members is on that committee. So we got to have to bend her ear for quite a long time. And so our newly elected Councilwoman Peak, she reignited the movement, and we got in there and we got going, and our primary ordinance was passed unanimously on February 12th, 2019. So you can see we went from September of 2016 to February 12th of 2019, and we did it. And the kids never gave up, and it wasn't the same group of kids all the way through. They passed the torch as they graduated and moved on. So it was a really great effort. Next slide, please. Okay, our mayor's perspective was that this was going to make our community better, and it wasn't an initiative that was going to be lightly taken since it had kids' voice with it. And we promoted that as much as we could. Lieutenant Dan Davis from the police department was on a Channel 41 news segment about primary seatbelt ordinances, and I couldn't get that to load on my slide, but his general opinion and well thought out opinion was this wasn't about revenue, this was about safety. So we needed to keep that in mind, that this was all about our community safety. And then the students' perspective, of course they were proud and they were excited that they were able to get this done, but it was just the beginning for them. Next slide, please. So we wanted to work to continue to change the policy at the state level. So we continue to attend state conferences, and Traction is a big conference that we attend in Missouri. So if you have high schools that you're aware of, and when Traction can actually start having conferences again, I would highly recommend it, because it not only focuses on leadership, it focuses on traffic safety. We hosted a Cass County Team Summit last January, where we invited schools within our county to come so we could get the message out to them and they could take back to their schools. My students have presented at the national level. We're a national leader school for traffic safety through a program called Project Ignition. So we've been to several states to present our message and to try to get people to understand that kids have a voice. They have a letter writing campaign that they're putting together right now. I'm not there to supervise anymore, but they've selected all the cities in Missouri that are 25,000 or greater that don't have a primary seatbelt ordinance. They're writing letters to their mayors to encourage them to consider that. The mayor from Jefferson City is in the pink has the pink on her outfit in that one picture where we had won an award. And she's encouraging our kids to try to come visit Jefferson City. So we're really proud of that. We also push Buckle Up, Phone Down. We've had our city and our school district have proclamations for Buckle Up, Phone Down Day with the state for the last 2 years. And so we've done initiatives with that. We, for Red Ribbon Week, we promoted Buckle Up, Phone Down in the information, and we call it our swag bags, that we gave to our participants in that. So we're still getting that Buckle Up, Phone Down all over the place. We're talking about safety for our non-drivers inside the cars and on bicycles and pedestrian and all of that. Our middle school kids are putting together videos to take to our elementary schools with all the information about seatbelt safety and car seat safety, so they're aware of what needs to be done. That was going to be a live and in-person campaign until we know where we're at today, so they can't do that. So that's where we're at. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the people that we need to thank, and Belton Cares is our community coalition. Belton Police Department, Lieutenant Dan Davis and Lieutenant John Baker have been amazing. John Baker and I've worked together on Destination Safe grants. It's helped us with our Cass County Teen Summit. The school district, they just pretty much say, okay, we can do this if I ask. So I've been really lucky on that aspect. The city of Belton, I kind of have an in because our mayor is a retired teacher, so I can call him and he'll listen, and it's really great. MoDOT, I think John might have even mentioned my name, and that's how I got here today. They help us with anything we need. They're just amazing. Project Ignition is a national organization or national program through National Youth Leadership Conference or Council, and we get a lot of information and ideas and collaboration with kids around the United States through that group. Traction is the leadership conference I mentioned earlier. And then Tyrant is an organization that deals with drowsy driving. And they've come to our school and spoken a few times. And we appreciate what they do. And the girls in the top corner in their letter jackets and orange vests, we still do random seatbelt checks in the mornings for our students to kind of get where we're at for our students. Next slide. Okay, this is my moment to brag because my students are who I am. They're not, I couldn't do this without them. So these are the students that were my key leaders throughout this time that we got our seatbelt safety going. And as you can see, I have anywhere from seniors in college to freshmen in college. And Shannon is an engineering student. Jack is an engineering student. Emmeline is a nurse and going to be a doctor. Savannah's in nursing. Caden is in nursing. Justice is undecided. And Ashley's going to be in political science. So you can see it's a wide variety of kids, and they're just kids who do great things because they've been given the voice to be out in the adult community, so to speak. I have a little video I want to end with. It's funny. It's only 1 minute and 28 seconds, but I need to give you a little background first. We do other things besides just safe driving. We work at a local thrift store that their proceeds go to help people who are financially challenged. And we were there one night sorting, and they found a chicken soup, and they wanted it. And I'm like, we don't have room for any more junk. We can't do this. And they begged and said, if we can find some use for this, can we please get it? And I said, well, by the end of the week, and this was on Tuesday, I said, if you don't have an idea for me, then we're sending it back because we just don't have room. So it was not the next day, it was 2 days later. This is what I got for them to show me how we could use our chicken soup. So I hope you enjoy this little video.
All right, I linked it in the chat. I'll give it a go. We'll see how it goes. I may have to stop sharing and share with computer sound. And I need to put it in a browser, so
Oh,
no worries, Mary. We'll get this taken care of.
this is mostly just to show you that they're just kids. Oh, here, I might be able to show it from mine. Um, um,
Well, I think for the interest of time, Mary, we're running out of time. So I did share it in the chat. There it goes.
Can you see it?
So it looks like it's a great video, and I encourage people to click on the link or see if they can find it, and maybe Mary can share it again in the chat, because mine didn't seem to.
Yeah, and it pulls up from mine, so I don't know what I did wrong. I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's no worries. Thank you very much to all three of our speakers for their really informative and varied discussions today. So, oh, I was missing part of the link. Okay, well, sorry.
Oh, we still have
So,
time.
Okay, I'll see if I can work on that. But in the meantime, I know that a lot of people have been asking questions, and some of our folks have been responding to those in the chat. So it's been, since I've been sharing my screen, I haven't been following along necessarily. One question for all three of our speakers. So if you would all go just one at a time, maybe in the order that you spoke. What advice would each speaker give to organizations or even individuals who want to get involved in Vision Zero initiatives? So that may be, I think everything you've described is a part of Vision Zero. We're looking to make everything safer for all of our road users. So John, if you want to go ahead and try to tackle that one first.
Sure. I mean, I think that my simple answer would be everybody can do something, and you may not see the impacts of that on a global scale or a statewide scale, but I mean, the whole idea behind Vision Zero, or, for Missouri, Show Me Zero, or just creating change, is that everybody does their part. And so, I'm sure it will be frustrating when you're doing your part and you're seeing maybe others aren't. But the more people that we can, it's kind of this positive peer pressure thing. I mean, you look at Mary's group and what those kids did. I mean, they saw, hey, Grandview did this. Why can't we do this? And they made a difference in their community, and the more of those, everybody's kind of got their own little ripple effect. And, if we can all accumulate those together, then that's a pretty big ripple effect that would take place throughout our region and throughout our state.
I would recommend that they contact, I would actually first give them Amanda Horner's email and cell phone number. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that. I'd give them her email, but I would recommend that they contact their city sustainability commission. And this is particularly like with regard to bikes and bicycle safety and sharing the roads. Get a hold of the schools to find out if there's any bicycle rodeos or anything like that. Bike Walk KC is always looking for help. And they do have great education programs. So I encourage people to get on board with those folks. The Bike Walk KC is one of my favorite organizations in the world. And so they do a lot of education, and it actually folks can earn a bike by going through their training program. So I just encourage people to get with them and see what they can do, but also talk to your local sustainability people, your city planning commissions, and they may have some ideas that you can help in your own community.
And Mary, you got any ideas? I mean, obviously the schools can make a big, can make a big change in their communities too. Do you have any recommendations for how people might communicate, or how they might work with schools or school districts to enact Vision Zero, you think?
I think a lot of school districts have resource officers. That might be a place to start. Any of your civic organizations, I think you could go anywhere, but once you give kids a platform and let them know that their voice is important, they come up with so much more. It's about them. This wasn't about what I thought we should do. They ran with it. And so I think that's been part of the best parts of my teaching career, has been what I've learned from my kids and what they can do if we just give them a voice. So that's my platform for today.
That's great. Let's see. We had a question. It was in the chat, and it is for Mary. Is this the correct project ignition? It's out of the United States. There was a link in
And
there.
I just responded, but it's you just go, and I'll do it for everybody. It's just you go to nylc.org and you can find it on there. So it's a service learning. It's part of a service learning program.
Okay.
And if anybody would like to try to do that, and they need some starters, we've been a leadership school there for about 10 years. So getting the grant, and because they do give you a grant to help you with funding to get things started in your school. So I would be more than glad to share what we've done to be able to accomplish that.
That's pretty great. I did want to give an opportunity to my colleague Amanda Horner, who you've heard mention of now, to kind of discuss, and also you've heard a little bit of discussion. I know Mary mentioned it also about Destination Safe. So it's in the logo of my digital background here, and so I thought I'd give an opportunity for my colleague to kind of briefly talk about that in case any of you are interested in becoming further involved with that. She also just linked something in the chat. So Amanda?
Yeah, sure. So I did just send the link to the Destination Safe Committee page, excuse me, coalition page, from which you can find more information. But it's essentially a group of law enforcement, health officials, hospitals, health departments, pretty much anybody that has any kind of interest in reducing traffic crash fatalities around the region. It is a little bit bigger than the MARC region, so it also includes, I think I'm totally going to say this wrong, but 4 counties on the Kansas side, and I believe 9 counties on the Missouri side. And it, rather than focus on the engineering and pieces that are often associated with Destination Safe, it is more focused on the education, enforcement, and emergency response. There's also a call for projects each year in which both KDOT and MoDOT fund education, enforcement, and emergency response projects throughout the region. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's interested in participating. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we have a pretty active group. We have our leadership committee, as well as one that specifically focuses on public education and outreach, and then another subcommittee that focuses specifically on the crash data and kind of how we can use that to better our efforts and things like that. So if you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to me. If you're interested in joining, please let me know.
Awesome, thank you. I just wanted to take one more minute to give thanks to our 3 amazing speakers this morning. So John, Mary, and Jay, take a virtual bow here. I thought all of your presentations were amazing and fantastic. And we really, really appreciate you taking the time and joining us today. And I just, as an FYI, since we're about to wrap it up, we have another session that's coming up today in about 30 minutes time, entitled Technology is Driving Vision Zero Forward. It's going to be, we've got some amazing speakers that are going to be talking about kind of future tech and stuff like that. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. So if you're able to, we hope that you'll be able to join us at 10:30. So again, thank you to our speakers, and thank you all for your time and joining us this morning. Hope to see you soon, and have a good morning.
Thank you, everyone, for staying the whole time.